felt like you were doing everything quote unquote right in your career, but still felt alone or misunderstood? Maybe you're navigating complex dynamics at work, questioning who you can trust, or wondering where your support system is. If so, you're definitely not alone. This week, I talk with Judy Hoberman, executive coach, speaker, and longtime champion for women in leadership. Judy shares powerful stories from her early career in male-dominated industries and what she's learned about navigating relationships, building trust, and leading with authenticity. In our conversation, we talk about the challenges women still face, especially at higher levels, the pressure to perform without showing vulnerability, and the importance of finding your people. Judy offers practical strategies for building meaningful connections, even if you're introverted or unsure where to start, and why generosity and curiosity are essential leadership tools. Thank you so much, as always, for listening. Welcome to the Impostor Syndrome Files. My name is Kim Meninger, and as an executive coach and former high-tech leader, my personal mission is to help professionals overcome imposter syndrome so that you can advance your career with confidence. Each week, I interview a new guest who brings a powerful perspective to this conversation, including personal stories, best practices, and new insights. The more we talk about this issue, the more we destigmatize imposter syndrome, recognize that we're not alone, and empower ourselves to access the tools and resources that can help us and those around us. Thank you so much for listening and for sharing with others you think would benefit from this conversation. Welcome, Judy. It's so great to have this conversation today. I'd love to start by inviting you to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, I don't know where to start, Kim. So, I guess, when I first started out, I was in commercial roofing. I couldn't even think where I was. I was in commercial roofing. And it was a very interesting time for me because it really showed me how people respected you or did not respect you. And so I was told back then that the only thing I needed to do was basically show up, because I was going to be selling commercial roofing, but I knew nothing about it and they wouldn't train me. And it was in the 70s, and they said, you just have to dress the part. So you always have to wear a skirt, it was the 70s. And I remember the very first day where I was going on the roof, I'm climbing a ladder in my skirt. And I have all these roofers and management underneath me, and they're all giggling. And I'm thinking, oh my God, like, what am I going to wear the next day that underneath my skirt so they could all laugh at me? But it was a very big learning experience, because what turned out was the management was really, they just wanted to be the face of the company and bring business in. But the roofers were my protectors. They told me, nobody's going to hurt you. Nobody's going to bother you. We will take care of you. And it was about the relationships. And I say that because, in sales is all about relationships, business is all about relationships. And I had like a group of roofers around me that were taking care of me. Fast forward a couple of decades, and I ended up in financial services, all about relationships. So it just kept, relationships kept traveling with me. And I did financial services for quite a long time, did very well in it, didn't know anything about that either. But when I left, they had put me on the corporate side briefly, and it was like, ugh. But when I left, I remember thinking, what was I missing throughout my entire career? And I was missing somebody that understood someone like me. I was a single mom. I was female. I was all of these things that checked off boxes now, but I checked off boxes before they existed. And so when I left, I thought, I really wish I would have had someone like me. And then I went, I'm supposed to do this. This is who I'm supposed to be. I became that person that I wish I would have had. And I do that for a lot of other women. So I'm an executive coach. I do masterminds for women. I do leadership and sales training. I'm a speaker. I'm a coach. I'm all that kind of stuff. But I really majorly focus on women and helping them build relationships and giving them the tools that they need to be successful. That was a long story long.
No, that was great. No, I loved, sort of hearing the arc of your career and how you got to where you are today. And I'm curious, when you talk to women today, how much has changed and how much has stayed the same, right? Are you hearing similar themes to what you experienced in your own career, or are you seeing?
Yes and no. Yes and no. It really, first of all, it depends on who it is. If you talk to somebody that is, young, they have never experienced the problems that women had with each other. Like,
Mhm.
I've already done this myself and I don't want to help you. And, women are territorial. They never had that. And they also never had the male female challenge.
Mm.
On the flip side, when you're talking to, most of my clients are probably, 40s, 50s, 60s, that they all know about this. They felt it and they're still feeling it. So as much as we say, we've come a long way, and we still have a lot of work to do, because you still have the same challenges where you're not being taken seriously, or imposter syndrome, or any of those things that we didn't talk about then, that we were allowed to, I'm using air quotes, talk about them now. You never talked about being confident. You would never do that, because then people would think you're not. And
Mm.
you'd never talk about, being bold, because then they have a different B word for you. So it's very different. So it's very different, but it's also very much the same.
So I wonder if you can talk a little bit more about the relationship piece, because what you said about the roofers is really interesting. And I think, finding your support systems wherever you are is so
Yeah.
critical to navigating the workplace. And so, can you say more about how you recommend women, maybe who struggle with that, should think about relationships in the workplace?
I think the first thing you have to remember is you have to know your people. And when I say that, it doesn't mean that you have to have a team of people. You have to know your people around you. You have to know your people. Who are the ones that are going to support you? Who are the ones that are going to hold you back? Who are the ones that, you can count on? And even if you don't really know how to do it, it's really more about people that you come in contact with. I always tell my clients, you need to build your relationships before you need them, because when you need them, it's usually too late. If I said today that I don't want to do what I'm doing anymore, I have enough people that I can say, okay, who do you know? And they would tell me. If you don't have anybody in your network, start, even when you're not looking for anything, even when you're not, go to a networking event, meet a few people. I'm an introvert. So for me to tell you to go to a networking event is, funny, because it's not something that I love to do. I'm better now, but I can remember when I first started my company, I would stand at the door of a networking event, look at it, and I would absolutely freeze, because I didn't want to walk into someplace I didn't know anyone. But then how do you meet people if you don't walk in, right? So after the first one, which was just a horror show, I just sat there with someone I didn't know. We didn't speak. We didn't talk at all. We didn't introduce ourselves. We didn't swap cards. And I got in the car and I went, "Whoop, I just networked," which was the biggest joke in the world. What I found out, though, is if I showed up early to an event, and I always show up early, but if I was there, 15 minutes to 30 minutes early, and I'm the first one there, guess what happens? Somebody walks up to you first. You don't have to walk up to them. So
Mm.
women that don't have a network and don't really know how to do it, go someplace early. And you will find people will come right up to you and say, "Hey, my name is Judy. What's yours?" And it just takes down the pressure. But you really, really, really have to think about creating the relationships around you. And it starts with just a simple hello, just a hello. That's all you have to do. And it starts. You don't have to be friends with everybody. You don't have to love everybody. You just want to find the people that you want to be around. And you
Mm.
will. And you'll find people. I mean, I see people that when I'm in front of them, I take a step backwards because I don't like their energy. So I know those are not my people. So it's things like that.
Yeah. Well, and I like the tip too about going early, because that is uncomfortable for a lot of people. And I'm an
Yeah.
extrovert and I still find it uncomfortable sometimes. And so setting yourself up for success in those types of environments is really important. Another tip that I often recommend is look for the person who feels more uncomfortable than you do.
Doesn't always work, but a lot of times it does. A lot
Yeah.
of times it does, because it makes you feel like the expert.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And I wonder too, because sometimes people are afraid. You talked about the fact that it wasn't okay years ago to talk about confidence or to talk about it, imposter syndrome or things like that. there are sort of mixed messages these days. I think there's more of a push for vulnerability and kind of
Yeah,
sharing more openly with each other. But then I still hear from women who are afraid that if they share vulnerably, it will be used against them. They're not sure
absolutely.
how much they can trust people, right?
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. I mean, things have changed, things have not changed. But
Hmm.
you also have to figure out like where you are. And one of the things I talk about is the lonely leader. And as you go higher up through the ranks and you know you have these big jobs or whatever, um, it gets lonely. You don't know who you can talk to, you don't know who you could trust, you don't know who has an agenda, who doesn't have an agenda. You don't know how they're going to take your stuff and you know send it up and so you're out of the picture. You don't know that. And that's why, you know, you have to reach out and trust people and or meet people and then decide if you trust them or not. But that's why you know I always tell people you have to have a coach. You have to have a coach. Coaching is, you know, a lot of people say, well, I shouldn't have a coach because I'm doing really well. I don't even know what that means. You're doing well, so you don't need a coach. Elite athletes have coaches. They're doing really well.
Hmm.
But a lot of people think it's punitive, especially if you're in corporate and they give you a
Yeah.
coach. Now you're thinking, oh, I didn't do something well. I'll never get advanced and all of that nonsense. But the truth is, a coach is somebody you can trust. It's a, you know, and it's somebody that will give you the right things to, you know, the strategies, the ideas. So sometimes it's that you have to do. But a lot of times, you know, you're working with people and you don't know, you know, how much can I tell them? Because I really don't want them to think I'm weak or, you know, I have no confidence. So it's a very it is it's mixed messages. It's definitely mixed messages.
Yeah. And I wonder too, going back to what you were saying about maybe the younger generation of women hasn't experienced the conflict with other women.
Hmm.
And I think that is still a big part of what a number of my clients face, and it sounds like yours too.
Yeah.
Do you have thoughts on how to navigate those kind of dynamics if you feel like there's either competition or some resentment there that sort of women not supporting each other in the workplace?
Yeah, you know, and it's very interesting to me why women will say, look, I had to do this all by myself.
Hmm.
And why shouldn't you have to do it by yourself? It builds character. Well, it might. And, you know, but why are we making it harder for the next generation? Why are we doing that? And I still don't get that. And every time I hear somebody saying that they're struggling with that, I still don't understand why. Women are very territorial, whether it's personally or professionally. They are. And if you saw somebody that was younger than you might be threatened by them. Somebody that was smarter than you could be threatened by them. And so instead of helping them, you push them away. I always say, you know, if there's somebody that you would like to know more about, or you want to figure out why they're doing what they're doing in the way that they're doing it, have a conversation with them. You don't have to say, okay, Kim, so tell me why you're mean to me. You don't have to just talk about that. Tell them something that you admire about them. It could be the smallest little thing. I love the way you do X. Can you show me how to do it? Can you tell me how you got started? I'd love to know more about you. If they still put the wall up, they're not your people. They're just not your people. So you be professional and you do what you have to do. But many times they're in the same boat you're in. They don't know if you want to be friends with them or like them or you know, you don't know. How do you know? Because people put up this facade. They're just as nervous and scared as everything that we feel. They just hide it better. So,
Yes. That's a
right?
great point because that kind of behavior is a sign of insecurity, right?
Totally.
It's
Yeah.
not confident behavior. And so, like you said, you may put some effort into it and uncover that the person really can't be trusted and there isn't a lot of point in continuing. But I think it's good leadership to be the one to take that step and to,
Yeah.
to reach out to somebody, the olive branch, so to speak, right? Like you said, and just show curiosity, show interest in the other person, and you might be surprised by how they
Yeah.
react.
I always say be interested in someone, not be interesting to them.
Mm,
So being interested in them means you're going to ask some questions. You're going to be curious. You're not interrogating. You know, I have been dubbed the question queen, and a lot of times when that when I was in the financial services, if I would walk into a room, you would absolutely see people rolling their eyes when I walk in because they know I was going to ask them a lot of questions and people are uncomfortable with that. But it wasn't questions, about, name, rank, and serial number. It wasn't those kind of questions. It was about letting me know something that was interesting about them. So when I used to recruit people, I would say, tell me something that you're proud of that's not on your resume. Now that's a loaded question because people are. I just worked on my resume. It's amazing. I know it's great. I can read it. Now tell me something you're proud of, and it was so interesting things that people would tell me, things that they probably didn't say out loud before, but I was interested in them. When I got married to the colonel, his older daughter said to me before we got married, "Why do you ask him so many questions? He was a colonel." I'm like, I know, but I'm interested. And if I stop asking questions, that's when you should be worried. She's never asked me that question again because that's the truth. I want to know about you. Tell me why you do this. How did you get started? I want to know everything. I can't do that in one sitting, so I build a relationship with you. And then I might ask you a question, or I might ask you 10 questions. I don't know, but it just depends on how it works. But it's really important to let people know that you want to know more about them. Why, when did you get into this role? This is like an amazing role. How did you do that? Anything that you can start with. Or you see a picture on the wall and they have a dog and it's like, oh, I love that. What kind of dog is that? Okay, you just broke the ice. So it's anything that you can start the conversation with and you ask, open-ended questions because it gives them the opportunity to speak.
Well, and I love this because I have always joked that people love to talk about themselves, right? And I think that there's a lot of pressure that we put on ourselves to, like you said, be interesting. So I'm trying to prepare my responses to the questions you might ask me, as opposed to really showing genuine curiosity in another person. And if you think about it as, what am I going to ask this person? How am I going to show my interest in that? That's a much easier conversation to have than
Right.
treating it like you're in an interview, right?
Right. And it's true. Your guard goes down. You can breathe. You're not so stressed. And I think a lot of times women don't know what to do in a conversation.
Hmm.
What do you talk about? A lot of women will say, I don't want to talk about my personal life because this is business. Well, they do overlap in some way. They do overlap. Maybe you work with your spouse. Maybe your kids are, they're going to be what you are, whether it's a financial services or a doctor or whatever, because it does intersect. You don't have to tell them what color your car is or where you live. You don't have to give any information like that. But if I said to you, "Oh, that's that looking through your window, it's gorgeous there. Tell me about where you live." You know what I mean? That would be very different than me saying, "Okay, so tell me this and tell me that." Because it doesn't mean anything, but that would be of interest because you're proud of where you live and that's a beautiful area, you know?
Yeah. And I wonder if you see, I mean, we both probably work primarily with women, but it was my experience in my previous work life in high tech, and I know you've worked with lots of men too. I think that they socialize differently. Like,
Differently.
yes. And I think
Yep.
that's important to acknowledge as well. And I think it goes back to some of the things that you were talking about too, of trust and insecurity, but also women are really busy. And if we feel like, oh, God, I don't have time for chit chat, I've got to get the work done so I can get home and do this second job of taking care of my kids. And I'm the chauffeur for all my kids' stuff. And so it almost feels like a luxury we can't afford. But so much of the influence that we build, right, is rooted in these social conversations and connections that we have with other people.
But you don't have to make it as, a third job. You don't have to do that either. But you can, carve out time on your calendar like anything else and say, I'm going to meet people, an hour here, an hour there, go to a networking event, go to some place that, people congregate, because otherwise you're going to sit in front of your computer. Now, you can still do it on your computer. You can go onto LinkedIn, you can meet people, but it's going to be different. It is going to be different. You just have to decide like what's really important. And I mean, I don't want to sit and have 500 new friends. I don't. I don't have time to do that. But I do want to have an impact over people because I want to be able to give them what they need. I don't care, it's not what I want them to have. I want to know about them. Tell me what you're looking for. What does it look like? And maybe I can help you. But
Hmm.
that's the only way to do it is to really get down into the nitty-gritty. It's funny when I first really, really, really started working, it was back, when I was in my early 20s, and I had a job with Fuller Brush. Do you know Fuller Brush?
No.
Okay, Fuller Brush is true door to door,
Oh.
true. And you would sell these amazing things like brooms and mops, real sexy things. But I don't even know why I got this job. I don't know. Anyway, I decided that the first door I was going to knock on was my mom because I know her and she'll buy from me and it'll start everything off really well. And I have already have a relationship with her. And so I knocked on the door and she answered the door and I went through my whole spiel and she said, "Yeah, I don't need it." And I thought, "Oh my God, this is going to be harder than I thought." And she said, "Well, let me just explain something to you." And I never forgot this. And it's all about relationships. She said, "Just because someone loves you does not mean they're going to buy from you."
Hmm.
That was number one. Number two was just because someone loves you, they're going to share you with their friends, meaning referrals. So, so there's a way to start a relationship, even if, and when I sold, financial services, a lot of times I talk people out of buying it from me because they didn't need it or what they had was better. But I created a relationship with them because
Hmm.
I wanted to protect them and not pay me. And people would say to me, "Didn't you just talk yourself out of this?" I would say, "Yeah, but I know you have what you have is better, or you don't, this is not what you need. And I'll find somebody that has what you need." And I started building those relationships. And one by one, they would start giving me referrals because they would say, "She actually listened to us. She didn't push anything on us. She was very easy to talk to. She explained everything." Those are great things to hear. And that's how the relationships were built.
Yeah. I mean, that's so powerful too, because what you're really talking about is you're building trust and credibility in a way
Yep.
that allows other people to essentially be ambassadors for you, right? Because they know that you're doing what's right for the person. You're not just out there for your own self-interest.
Yeah. Yeah. And I always said if I could just connect people, just do that and do nothing else, I would love it.
Mm.
But my mortgage company says, "Yeah, I don't know about that." My utilities are going, "Yeah, I'm not sure about that either." So it's not something you can do, but I just do it naturally. I do. I just do it naturally because I really want people to do better. I want my mission has always been to help one woman a day. And of course, people will say to me, "What about 100 women a day?" No, no. One woman a day exponentially is a lot of women. But if I could do that, if I can change something for you today, then you're my woman. And when I
Mm.
do, when I talk about it, when I'm speaking, there's always a woman that'll come over to me and say, "Can I be your woman today?" Well, that's very humbling. It really is. But that's how it works because that's how I build relationships. It's
Mm.
about you. It's not about me.
Yeah. And that I think leads to its own confidence. I'm a big believer that we feel more confident when we're being of service to others because
Hmm.
the attention is not on ourselves and how well we're performing, but on other
Yeah.
people, right?
Yeah, totally. That's how it works.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, and I know you wrote a book, so can you tell us a little bit more about that too?
I actually wrote four.
Oh, well, I'm
And
looking at the one that you have
yeah, this
split.
this one, yeah. So this is Walking on the Glass Floor. This is the last book I wrote, and it's all about leadership, women in leadership, and it's about the seven qualities of women who lead. However, it's also for men. But I write, my stuff is really geared towards women, but men like it because they work with women, they work for women, so they're good with it. But this is all about leadership. These are the seven skills that you may not think of leadership skills like courage, authenticity, generosity. These are things that I truly believe as a leader, you should be participating in this.
Mm.
So it's walking on the glass floor, and it really means that, okay, so you've climbed through, you've crashed through the ceiling, blah, 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 and now you're on the floor. Are you going to tap dance here? You're going to leave? You're going to just try it and leave? Or are we going to be able to help you keep where you are and keep your footing. And that's what it is.
So tell me more about authenticity in your mind. You know, everybody has a different definition of it, and I think this goes back to some of the conversation we were having about vulnerability too, and the sort of fear of putting ourselves out there too much and what some of that backlash may be, because it's still the case that women are much more likely to experience backlash for stepping out of traditional gender stereotypes and, you know, like you said,
Or
the
just being them, or
yeah,
just being them. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So for me, authenticity is people should know who's showing up.
Mm.
You know, you shouldn't have like 12 different personas. It's who you are. I am the same exact person here. If I'm talking on stage, I'm the same exact person. So who are you? Because people want to know the real you. They don't want to have to guess, uh-oh, which one is showing up today? Is the mean one? Is the nice one? So authenticity is just you be you. That's all you have to do is just be you. But you have to be comfortable with that also, because a lot of us are not comfortable in our own skin. We're just not. So you have to decide, like, what is it that is really holding you back from being comfortable? And you deal with that part. And that's a whole other issue. But I just think authenticity is as simple as who you are, how you show up, how people perceive you, and how they see you, because perception is reality. And I say that because I have been perceived as being intimidating, unapproachable, and out of someone's league. And I've had that mentioned to me by many, many people. And the reason is because I'm an introvert and because I have like a force field around me. I
Mm.
don't invite you in. You have to like crash it down. But if you take the time to do that, you'll like me. But if you don't, then you have this, oh, she's so intimidating. And I'm not intimidating whatsoever. It's just, but perception is reality. So I do my very best to, when I show up, this is who I am. And if you know I'm an introvert, you might just pull me in and then I'm fine.
Do you share that? I think this is a really important point because I know a lot of introverts, and there is oftentimes a, a misconception that they're aloof or maybe
You're
not
right.
as interested in connecting. I think part of the challenge with introverts is that if if an extrovert is kind of talking and everything's out there in the open and there isn't as much mystery, whereas if an introvert's being quiet, we're projecting onto them, right? We're sort of making up stories about what's going through their heads and why they're behaving the way they are, and oftentimes, if we're insecure, the story we're making up is not favorable to either one of us,
Right.
right? And so I wonder, as it relates to authenticity, do you feel comfortable telling people that you're an introvert? Do you feel comfortable saying, I
Oh yeah,
tend to,
100%. 100%. In fact, a lot of times when I talk about what makes you unique, I always tell the story about when I first started my company. I knew nobody. I live in Dallas. I was relocated here. I left the company I was working with. So who am I going to network with? The only people I knew, because I traveled so much, were the people I just resigned from. That's not networking, right? You can't do that. And so I started speaking everywhere. I didn't care where it was. It didn't matter to me. I just had to get out there. Remember, I'm an introvert, but if I'm speaking, I can just be me on stage. Same thing, same person. Anyway, um, I kept telling my coach that nobody talks to me until I come off stage. Not one person will ever speak to me. And she said to me, don't forget you're an introvert. Like, I can't forget that, but it's still not comfortable. So I did this informal survey and I asked people separately and at many different events. I would say, what 3 words, how would you describe me? And that's how they would describe me: intimidating, unapproachable, and out of our league. Till I came off stage and they realized it wasn't like I was pushing them away. It was just, I'm an introvert. And so after it happened like 3 days in a row, I said, I have to do something. And I couldn't figure out what to do. So I went to another speaking engagement and I was wearing a pair of sparkly boots. And I always wear boots. I don't care what season it is, I wear boots. And this woman came up to me and she said, I love your boots. And the first thing I had to think of was, have I already spoken on stage because somebody's talking to me? That was the first thing I thought of. And so I thanked her and everything. And then another woman and another woman. The next day I spoke somewhere else, wore the boots, same thing happened. Third day, I thought, I am going to be an athlete now. Athletes winning, they don't change their underwear. I'm not changing my boots. And so boots became, and I told my coach this, and she said, well, maybe that was your icebreaker. So boots became part of my brand.
Hmm.
And so now wherever I go, if somebody says something about my boots, I'm going, okay, it still works. I'm good. That still works. But that's how I know what it's like, if you're trying to meet people, if you're trying not to be the introvert, if you're whatever you're doing, I don't know how to do an icebreaker otherwise, and other than, showing up early. That's my other icebreaker. But to me, it was a learning experience for me. It really was.
Yeah. Well, I love that story too, because that's an authentic expression of your personality, those boots too, right?
Right, but it just goes to show that I'm not afraid to tell this. I tell the story all the time, and people just laugh and they look at me and they go, "You're an introvert?" Because here as a speaker, how could you be an introvert? It's very easy. It's very easy. You just talk to yourself before you get on stage and you're good. But I have no problem telling people I'm an introvert or anything else. I mean, I will tell them stories about me. I will always say to the person that brings me in, don't even read my bio. By the time we're done, you'll know all about me anyway.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that approach because I always joke that if there's information missing, we will make it up, right? Going
That's
back
right.
to my
And there's nothing to make up with me. There really isn't.
yes.
I got nothing.
And people feel more connected to you the more they know about you, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's a really great tip. I am so grateful to have you here, Judy, and I know there's so much more where this came from. We're just scratching the surface here in our short time together. You've written 4 books. You do this for your job. Where can people find you if they want to learn more about you and your work?
You can either go to LinkedIn, I'm under Judy Hoberman, or go to my website, which is sellinginaskirt.com. And that's my company, and you can find everything you want on either place or both places.
Wonderful. I'll make sure those links are in the show notes. And thank you so much for being here.
You're so welcome, and thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for listening to the Impostor Syndrome Files. If you would like to continue this conversation in a safe and trusted space, I would love for you to join my virtual discussion group every Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern. For the past several years, the group has been limited to women, but it is now open, regardless of gender, to anyone who is interested in exploring and troubleshooting common workplace challenges, building better awareness of ourselves and others, and becoming more inclusive allies at work. Check out the show notes for more info on how to find us, and please join us next week for another episode of the Impostor Syndrome Files.